Other thing I want to talk about, other news that has come to the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Brian Flores off to Minnesota, accepted the defensive coordinator job with the Vikings. We were on hours before that decision was made, talking about how he should probably take a defensive coordinator job over the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job. He did. It is not the job we expected him to take whatsoever. I mean, I'm just going to be blatantly honest here. Is it a bad move for Brian Flores? Because my first thought was maybe this wasn't the most ideal spot for a guy trying to revamp his career.
Yes, I thought the same thing. I don't know if I'd go as far to call it a bad move. Any step up for him is has to be a good move. This is a guy who, a former head coach who has a lot of pride. I don't think he wanted to spend another year being an assistant coach or even a senior defensive assistant for the Steelers. But the thing is, it felt like he had his pick of jobs. I feel like Minnesota wasn't his only option, and that's where he landed. It probably isn't the most ideal. Look, it'll be an impressive piece of work, an impressive thing to put on his resume if he can actually make that Minnesota defense into something. But they need some work done. There's a little bit of talent there, but the Vikings really need some work done. So it'll be kind of a tall order for him when he probably, we don't know the inner workings of every deal, but he probably could have taken that Denver defensive coordinator job if he wanted, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think that he's pretty high up there. You'd probably have to wait. I think that was starting to come into play. It's like, okay, well, the Vikings really want me. The Cardinals job is not it.
Mm-hmm.
Do I wait it out for Denver and take a chance? Probably that was on his mind. But the Vikings, I'm just doing a little Google search here because I'm trying to find team rankings. And the first thing that comes up is a middle of December article that says that is titled "Now Presenting Your 32nd Ranked Vikings Defense." That's rough. I will say this, that I think that the Steelers defense was very bad when Brian Flores came in here. I didn't think that it was headed in the direction that it was. I thought that it had plenty of talent and it filled some good holes, but did I feel that they were going to be where they were at the end of the season? Not a chance. Not a chance. And to come in here and be one of the best defenses in football this season, both statistically and I think overall play wise, and to have guys like Mark Robinson play huge roles, Robert Spillane play 100% of the snaps the last 4 games of the season, Levi Wallace be your second most productive corner on the field with Josh Jackson and James Pierre playing big games, and then have games where you're totally blown out by the Bills and the Eagles, so your stat lines are just awful, to still finish the season ranked where the Steelers finished on defense is very impressive. And I do have to, you got to give credit to Terrell Austin there, but I think Flores showed that maybe he could step into a really bad situation and turn it around, especially if they give him time. If they're okay, look we're going to do our part to help you, then okay. But I don't think the Vikings are bad just because they're bad. I think they're at the end of a rebuild. They're at that point where everybody's starting to leave. Their team got old. Their defense got old, and then, then now they got to do it all over again. Maybe he's the key guy for that.
I was going to say, how much time do you think they're going to give him? Because this is a team that was the number 2 seed in the NFC this past year, right? 2 seed.
Were they the 2 seed? Yeah, I believe maybe the 3 seed, but they were up there. At one point, they were considered the favorite. Yeah.
Either way, they had Super Bowl aspirations entering this year. So I just don't know, there's going to be a bit of pressure on him, on that team, but him by extension Flores by extension to win and win immediately.
Yeah.
It seems like he's going to have to be that guy pretty quickly for them because the window, you have to imagine, I don't know when Kirk Cousins' contract is up, but I
want to say it's this season. It's after this season.
Yeah, this window's not going to be open for them forever, and this feels like a move to me by the Vikings to try and capitalize immediately on the talent that they have now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And for the Minnesota Vikings, it's a win. They got a great hire, at defensive coordinator. And maybe Brian Flores didn't have the job opportunities. And I think that does play a little bit of a role. Like, maybe he was just in a bad situation. He didn't want to wait it out for Denver. I mean, I read this morning that, who was it? It was Terry Bradshaw, actually, that said Sean Payton did not take the Arizona Cardinals job because of Kyler Murray, something we've talked about. Maybe that's, how he viewed the situation and just said, this isn't ideal, but it's better than returning as a senior defensive assistant to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023 and kind of just floating under the radar. You probably get a pay increase, which is nice. You get a better role in the team's development, which is nice. And it's not like, the Vikings have names to work with. Harrison Smith is getting old, but he's no slump. He's still Harrison Smith. I don't know if Patrick Peterson's coming back for another season, but that dude had a great year. Eric Kendricks is over there. Daniel Hunter's over there. Za'Darius Smith is over there. Dalvin Tomlinson is over there. Like, there's names. There's enough names. I don't know why they were bad. The Vikings always just strike me as a bad team. Like, even when they're good, I'm like, well, they're the Vikings. They're not very good. They're not really good.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think, yeah. I just remember the entire season, no one actually took them seriously. Not even when they beat the Bills up in Buffalo. They were just like,
and that game was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Then now it's just the Vikings. Like, maybe it's the Kirk Cousins effect.
Yeah.
And
maybe I think that's absolutely it. Like,
yeah,
it all just kind of boils. Every time you think about believing in the Vikings, you're like, well, am I going to put my faith in Kirk Cousins?
Yeah. Is it going to be Kirk Cousins? Probably not. Yeah. No, I agree. But if, hey, would a good defensive coordinator, do they just hire a new coach, or is it the same coach?
They hired a new one a couple years ago. I forget his name.
2 years ago. I don't remember, but it's a newer coach. Swaggy Kirk Cousins with the chains. So that's got to help a little bit. And now you got a new defensive coordinator. I don't know. I don't feel terrible about the situation. Do I think it was the best move? No. In the grand scheme of things, do we get to, if somebody offered me the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator job or the Pittsburgh Steelers senior defensive assistant job, I'm going to Minnesota. I'm going to learn how to ice skate, deal with the cold, and it's going to be just fine. You got a chance to win a Super Bowl next year. No matter what anybody says, that team's still going to be just as good.
Right.
So maybe it was the right move. Either way, I don't know. Not what we were expecting. No. So you got to take it with a grain of salt and just see what happens. But congrats to Brian Flores. I won't lie. I know where Brian Flores lives. I drove past him awkwardly. I don't think I've ever told this story out loud, except for like maybe to one or two media members. Brian Flores lives like kind of by me, and which I don't like. There's a fine line between like, oh, this is where the journalists and the normal people live, and then here's Brian Flores' house.
Yeah,
like,
you can tell where.
Yeah, you're not in my neighborhood. Like he lives by me. He's not my neighbor. And I drove by him one day awkwardly, and I know who he is. I don't know if he knows my name, but he knows who I am. Like, we've had conversations, and I'm driving by, windows down. I'm probably bumping something ridiculous. I mean, like, me, Taylor Swift was probably playing or something.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
And I look over, and it's Brian Flores getting the kid out of the car, and he just looks me dead in the eyes, and I look him dead in the eyes, and he's in his driveway. And I just like gave him a head nod and looked away. And I look back and he's got a big smirk on his face because he's like, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I wish I didn't see you because I don't want to know where you live. You don't want me to know where you live. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no. That being said, now that he's leaving, I am 100% going to see what the price of Brian Flores' house is. And on top of that, because I can't buy Brian Flores' house, where do you think I am? But I've gotten into this thing where I'm talking to my fiance and I'm like, yeah, I think we should start going to open houses for like super fancy houses just to see, just to like,
just a peek.
Like, what are you doing on a Saturday morning? Nothing. Let's go look at a fancy house. Like, let's go act like we have an opportunity to buy a fancy house. Can we? No, but like,
no, but you don't need to. It's an open house.
Yeah. How often are you getting to walk into fancy houses there? And I just want to know what the inside of a Brian Flores, probably a rental home. Like, there's no way he owned it for a year. Looks like in Pittsburgh, and I'm gonna go figure it out, and I'm gonna report back because I'm sure it's ridiculous. I have one radiator that works on the top two floors of my apartment. I guarantee you that's not the case in Brian Flores' house.
I'd almost certain.
Yeah. I'm talking heated, like probably heated countertops. That's how. nice it is. So I will be there, and we will get a full report of what Brian Flores' Pittsburgh home looks like. I'm going to try to sneak pictures. So
tune in next week, everyone.
Tune in next week. Yeah, to a couple of weeks. I'm going to drive by every day until I see the sign. Like, oh, there it is. I'm going. Got to make a phone call.